The movie kicks off in the middle of a thick African jungle. The trees stretch so high they almost block out the sun, and the river winds quietly through the greenery. That's where we meet two park rangers, Winston and his partner Gabby. Their job for the day isn't glamorous, just routine surveillance. They're drifting along in this small boat, letting the current take them while keeping a close eye on the wild surroundings. Gabby's got this drone buzzing overhead, filming everything so they don't have to trek through the dangerous undergrowth. Things are peaceful for a while, until out of nowhere, something slams into the drone. The video feed cuts out instantly, and Gabby curses under her breath. Winston shrugs it off and tells her it's not worth going into the forest. He's been here long enough to know people vanish in these woods without a trace. But Gabby's stubborn. She insists they can't just leave their gear behind like trash. After a little back and forth, Winston sighs and lets her go, though he stays behind in the boat. Gabby climbs onto the muddy bank and heads into the trees. We get a glimpse of the culprit, a boy, young and barefoot, clutching the busted drone like it's a prize. He isn't alone either. Another man lurks nearby, and the two smear mud across the camera lens before disappearing deeper inside. As Gabby moves further in, she notices pieces of the drone scattered around, but one vital part is missing. She frowns because she could have sworn it was there earlier. She pulls out her phone, hoping for service, but of course, there's nothing, not in a place like this. Back on the river, Winston tries to figure out why the drone's camera isn't showing anything. He quickly realizes it's been deliberately smeared with mud. That rattles him. Someone's out there watching them. Meanwhile, the boy and the man know these woods like the back of their hand. They start scattering a strange powder made from mushrooms, letting it float through the trees like a toxic mist. Gabby's still wandering and soon realizes she's hopelessly lost. She calls for Winston over the radio, but the boat is empty now. He's gone. She spreads out her map, desperately trying to orient herself, but the forest feels alive. The air is heavy and something's watching. She whirls around and spots a shadowy figure, only for it to vanish in an instant. The voices come next, whispery, distant, yet all around her. The sound makes her skin crawl. Gabby decides she needs to get out fast, but without realizing it, she stumbles straight toward the men's trap. She steps on a hidden rope, triggering a crude but deadly mechanism. A sharp wooden stake pierces her foot, and she screams in agony. Trembling, she pulls out her radio, begging Winston for help. Before she gets a reply, something rushes past her in the darkness. She yanks the wood out of her foot, gritting her teeth, and hobbles away, only to find herself standing before a bizarre red glow emanating from deeper inside. Back at the river, Winston has seen the light too, this eerie radiance growing stronger until it feels like the entire forest shifts from day to night in seconds. Against his better judgment, he abandons the boat and goes after Gabby. She, meanwhile, stands transfixed by the glow, eyes locked, almost hypnotized. Winston calls her name, but instead of an answer, the forest answers back. The same ghostly voices echo around him. Fear overtakes him, and in a panic, he loses his footing and tumbles into a swamp. He thrashes in the muck, coughing and spluttering, when he spots a figure behind a tree. Thinking it's Gabby, he drags himself toward it. But Gabby's nowhere near. She stumbled upon a small cabin instead. Bleeding and exhausted, she knocks on the door. No one answers, so she limps inside. The place is cluttered, packed with strange items. It's clearly lived in. She uses it as a shelter, tending to her wound before collapsing on a dusty bed. Out in the swamp, Winston claws his way out of the water, but something isn't far behind. A sound rattles through the trees, alien, guttural, unnatural. He bolts, sprinting in blind panic. Gabby dreams while she sleeps, a nightmare of vomiting up something unnatural. She wakes with a start to find two figures standing over her. They aren't strangers, they're the men from earlier. One presses a knife to her throat, demanding to know who sent her. Trembling, Gabby explains she was only retrieving her drone and fell into their trap by accident. The man sneers at her mangled foot and mutters that she ruined their work. Back outside, Winston hides behind a tree, shaking uncontrollably, whispering to himself that none of this is real. But reality doesn't care. The forest rustles, and when he dares to peek, a creature emerges. It moves on all fours, humanoid but horribly twisted. He doesn't wait. He runs for his life, heart hammering, while the beast lets out a scream that tears through the silence. Inside the cabin, the men finally reveal themselves. The older one introduces himself as Baron, and a younger, his son Stefan. They're oddly curious about her background, asking if she's from the city. Gabby insists she's a ranger station nearby, and when pressed, admits it's just her and Winston. Later, as dinner's being prepared, Gabby hears that chilling sound again and nervously asks what it is. Baron brushes it off with a casual lie, calling it an old cow. The three sit down to eat, but before touching the food, father and son recite a strange, unsettling prayer. Gabby stares at the meal, appetite gone. Baron smirks sarcastically, telling her to enjoy. Winston, meanwhile, is still sprinting blindly through the forest. A branch catches his foot, sending him tumbling face first into the dirt. He scrambles up only to find the monster looming closer, moving with horrifying speed. He reaches for his knife, only to realize it's gone. With no weapon, his only option is to run again, the creature howling behind him. Back at the cabin, nighttime falls. Everyone settles uneasily, but Gabby blurts out that she saw someone outside, someone not human. Both Baron and Stefan freeze at her words. They know what she's talking about, though they don't say it. Somewhere in the darkness, Winston hides once again, unaware that the mushroom-like roots are creeping toward him silently. They snake around the earth until they reach him. And then, with terrifying speed, they strike. Baron stayed up late, carefully mixing together some sort of homemade poultice to treat Gabby's injured foot. His hands moved with the ease of someone who had done this 100 times before, though his face remained grim. When he was satisfied with the mixture, he motioned to his son, Stefan, to continue the treatment while Gabby lay unconscious on the bed. While Stefan watched her, Gabby's mind wandered into another nightmare. This time, she dreamed that plants were sprouting from her body, vines slithering out of her skin like they'd been buried there all along. She jolted awake, heart racing, but found herself alone. The cabin was empty, the father and son gone, their tools missing. She called out, but got no answer. Fear gnawed at her, and she quickly reached for her radio. After a few static-filled moments, Winston's voice finally broke through. At first, relief flooded her, but that feeling didn't last. His words made no sense. He sounded confused, almost delirious, mumbling strange things that only deepened her worry. Trying to keep herself calm, Gabby built a small fire inside the cabin. The warmth was comforting, and she hoped the smoke might serve as a beacon for Winston to find her. Out in the woods, Baron and Stefan were on the hunt. They tracked a wild boar, and with precision, Baron killed it. But instead of simply celebrating the kill, he performed an eerie ritual. He smeared blood on his son's face and whispered apologies to Mother Nature for taking a life. It was unsettling, but it showed how seriously he treated the balance of the forest. The scent of smoke caught their attention, and Baron's expression darkened. He stormed back into the cabin, furious. He barked at Gabby that fires were forbidden during the day. His voice was sharp, filled with an authority that made her shrink back. Gabby defended herself, saying she only wanted Winston to see the smoke and come to her. Baron snapped that Winston had a radio and would find her if he wanted to. She didn't back down, though. She explained that Winston wasn't acting right, that something was wrong. Baron ignored her concern, brushing it off, and coldly told her he'd take her back later. That night, the atmosphere shifted. Baron sat by her bed again, carefully rewrapping her wound. Gabby, frustrated at the silence from Winston's end of the radio, gave up trying to reach him. Instead, she started talking with Baron, trying to understand this odd man who lived like a hermit in the jungle. She told him that his son deserved better, that Stefan should be in school, surrounded by kids his age, not stuck in the forest. Baron's response was firm. Stefan was learning what mattered, not what the outside world claimed was important. Curious, Gabby asked about Stefan's mother. For the first time, Baron's tone softened. He told her his wife had died of bone cancer 13 years ago. Gabby whispered her condolences, but he brushed them off, saying death was just part of life. He admitted he used to be a scientist, a specialist in plant diseases, a phytopathologist. His wife, Lily, had been a chemical engineer. When she passed, everything changed. The world lost its meaning, and the forest became his refuge. Stefan, sensing the mood, shyly offered Gabby a necklace. Baron told her it was a gift, something to remember them by. Gabby smiled politely, thanking the boy, though inside she felt a creeping unease. Something about the entire situation didn't sit right. Out in the wilderness, Winston's fate was sealed. His lifeless body lay smothered in mushrooms and plants, just like the strange visions Gabby had been having. Back in the cabin, Gabby once again slipped into another dream. This time, instead of plants bursting outward, the fungi forced their way inside, crawling toward her mouth. She woke violently, gasping for air, only to have Baron's hand clamp over her lips. His eyes were wide with fear. He whispered that the entity was close. Stefan grabbed his bow, his small frame tense but ready. The cabin walls shook as something prowled outside, trying to break its way in. Baron leaned in close and warned Gabby to stay completely silent. These creatures, he explained, were blind. They hunted by sound. He began smearing a strange liquid on her body, some kind of natural repellent, while he and Stefan braced themselves. The door rattled violently. Then, the nightmare entered. One of the humanoid fungi shoved its way inside. Its grotesque body twitched and pulsed, its movements unnatural. Before it could lunge at Gabby, Stefan loosed an arrow, hitting the creature and driving it back. For a moment, silence returned, but then another one came crashing in. This one was faster, angrier. The creature seemed disoriented, sniffing around for movement. Gabby, terrified, shifted slightly. The tiniest noise escaped her throat, and instantly, the creature turned. It charged. Stefan screamed and attacked, firing arrow after arrow. Father and son fought side by side, clashing with the monster until finally, it retreated into the night. Baron slammed the door shut and bolted it. Gabby sat trembling, drenched in the monster's blood. Stefan immediately stripped off his shirt and began wiping it from her, while Baron told her to trust him. Still reeling, Gabby tried to make sense of what had just happened. Baron then revealed the truth, or at least his version of it. These weren't animals. They were humanoid fungi, part of an ancient organism that had existed longer than human history. He claimed it was the largest living system on Earth, buried beneath the soil, feeding on humans whenever it wished. Gabby's face twisted with disbelief. She called it madness, a fairy tale. But Baron was insistent. He said people believe in gods far worse than this, and this one was real. She asked Stefan if he believed the same as his father. The boy simply replied, "It's time to sleep," and rolled over. That night, Gabby's dreams worsened. She wandered through the forest in her mind, feeling someone behind her. A hand touched her shoulder, and suddenly the fungus crawled up her neck. She woke up screaming. Stefan was there, sitting close, calling her beautiful. Despite the horror, she softened, showing him her phone. She snapped a picture of them together and scrolled through photos of her past life. Images of friends, places, and memories. Stefan's eyes widened, completely captivated by a world he had never seen. Their quiet moment ended abruptly. Baron stormed in, furious. His voice was sharp, accusing. He called Gabby a monster and ordered her to leave his house. Stefan looked torn but followed his father's lead. They packed to go elsewhere, abandoning the cabin. Left behind, Gabby gathered the broken pieces of her cell phone. As she searched the cabin one last time, she stumbled across an old book filled with notes, scribbles, diagrams, and strange records that might hold answers to the madness she'd been dragged into. Baron had a habit of slipping away into the woods to perform rituals that only made sense to him. One evening, he kneeled down before a massive, twisted tree whose roots seemed to pulse like veins. The bark split open just enough to reveal pale fungi sprouting inside, glowing faintly in the dim light. He pricked his hand and smeared blood into the crevice as though feeding the thing that lived beneath the soil. When he returned to the cabin, the mood shifted immediately. Gabby was hunched over his desk, leafing through his notebooks and papers. Her eyes darted up, guilty and nervous, as soon as he entered. He noticed more than just her intrusion. The marks of infection were beginning to show on her skin as well. She tried to hide it, but his sharp eyes caught everything. Baron's response wasn't comforting. He told her bluntly to leave. Gabby was rattled, and Stefan, standing silently nearby, clenched his fists. His face betrayed disapproval, but he dared not defy his father openly. Moments later, a series of heavy knocks rattled the cabin door. Baron grabbed a blade and went to investigate. The instant he stepped outside, Stefan rushed to Gabby. His desperation was childlike, yet heartbreaking. Tears burned his eyes as he hugged her tightly. Gabby's heart broke at his innocence. On the way out, she begged him to let Stefan come with her, but Baron only chuckled bitterly. He never even entertained the idea. They walked together through the dense undergrowth, the silence heavy. Gabby finally asked the question that had been gnawing at her. How had Berend and his son survived all this time without being consumed by the infection? His reply was chilling. "We are infected," he said flatly, his voice carrying no emotion. Before Gabby could press him further, something caught her eye. Half buried in the dirt was Winston's flashlight. Her heart pounded as she darted toward it, ignoring Berend's warning that the path ahead was dangerous. Reluctantly, Berend followed. Then, her world shattered. Just ahead lay Winston, his body smothered in grotesque fungi, but his chest still rose faintly. He was alive, trapped in a living nightmare. Gabby fell to her knees beside him, sobbing with relief and horror. Winston's cracked voice whispered for her to kill him. She shook her head violently, promising she'd get him out, promising she'd take him to a hospital. Behind her, Berend raised his weapon, ready to grant Winston's request. Gabby spun, screaming at him to stop. But Berend only placed an arrow into Winston's trembling hands. With the last of his strength, Winston dragged the tip to his chest. Her cries echoed into the trees, and that was all it took. The humanoid fungi stirred, their distorted forms moving closer. They barely made it back to the cabin, slamming the door shut behind them. Stefan rushed to Gabby, his face lighting up with joy that she hadn't abandoned him. Berend immediately began sealing the windows and stuffing the cracks with wood and fabric. The forest outside was alive with movement. The creatures were surrounding them. That night, Gabby dreamed again. This time, the infection inside her body was advancing, weaving through her veins. She woke in terror, realizing it wasn't just a dream. The fungi were spreading. She turned to Berend, accusing him of hiding some kind of medicine. He ignored her, muttering that he needed to pray, and walked out into the darkness. Gabby turned to Stefan, demanding to know where his father had gone. The boy's answer was simple: to pray. She took advantage of the moment, asking him about his mother. His reply was strange. He remembered very little, only that she lives in the forest now. Gabby froze, trying to piece it together. Stefan added quietly, "I can show you." Meanwhile, Berend was out in the woods, kneeling again before his god. The same red light flared faintly in the background, and for the first time, he looked shaken. The guttural cries of the humanoid fungi echoed around him, rattling even his hardened faith. Inside the cabin, Gabby tried desperately to convince Stefan to leave with her. She painted him pictures of life outside the jungle. He could train to be a ranger like her, meet people his age, even fall in love with women who weren't imaginary. But Stefan only repeated his father's words: "Everyone will die soon." Not long after, Berend returned. His face was pale, his eyes haunted by something he'd seen in the forest. He didn't speak a word. The next morning, he performed his ritual again, forcing another mushroom onto Stefan's tongue. Gabby's infection was worsening, spreading like wildfire under her skin. Berend left the cabin with Stefan, and when they returned, Stefan was buzzing with excitement. He rushed to Gabby, kissing her suddenly. At first, she was startled, but then realized he had slipped something into her mouth, the same mushroom. This time, though, something changed. The sickness in her body slowed. Her pain dulled. When Berend asked if she was ready to go back to her old life, she surprised everyone. She said she wanted to stay. He didn't answer. He simply turned and walked away. Stefan, overjoyed, began teaching her how to use a bow. Later, he led her to their sacred tree, the one Gabby had seen in her visions. In secret, Gabby pieced together her broken phone. When it flickered on, she scrolled through photos she had taken, of Stefan, of Berend, and of the horrifying creatures stalking the woods. She confronted Berend about his religion, pretending she wanted to know more. At first, he seemed pleased, but then suspicion twisted his face. He grew angry, his temper simmering. After pacing the cabin, he decided to show her anyway. The preparations were unsettling. Stefan smeared red paint on her face, while Berend blew strange powder into her eyes. Gabby's senses warped instantly. She was somewhere else, naked, waist-deep in a swamp. From the water, Stefan emerged, also bare. Their encounter was surreal, blurred between dream and desire. Suddenly, she was back at the sacred tree, visions of death and fungi overwhelming her. Then she jolted awake in the real world. Hours had passed. though it felt like months. Baron demanded to know what she had seen, what the entity had told her. She was confused, struggling to recall. Slowly, it came out. The creature wanted Stefan's life. Baron's face cracked for the first time, his body sagging. He couldn't bring himself to do it. Days passed. Gabby and Stefan grew closer, laughing quietly, exchanging smiles like young lovers. Baron, however, withdrew into silence, weighed down by the impossible choice. That night, while Baron prayed outside, Gabby and Stefan tried to escape. They slipped through the dark trees, hearts racing. But Baron was waiting, blocking their path. His face was carved with pain and anger. He couldn't understand why his son would betray him after everything. Gabby pulled a knife, holding it up to stop him. Baron kept walking. He sneered that she'd take Stefan to the city, to live a life of chains and slavery. Gabby's voice rose, spitting back that he was nothing more than a madman, hiding in the woods with delusions of gods and fungi. She pulled out his own journal, the one she'd stolen earlier. She promised to expose him, to show the entire world who he really was. The forest went deathly silent around them, the tension so thick it felt alive. As Gabby and Stefan prepared to leave, Baron's voice cut through the tension. He told his son there was nothing out in the world worth chasing, nothing but emptiness. If Stefan abandoned him now, he said, his mother's sacrifice would mean nothing. Gabby snapped back that it hadn't been a sacrifice at all, that Baron was the one who had killed his wife. Torn between them, Stefan wavered, then stepped back to his father's side. Gabby, heartbroken, left, but halfway down the path she stopped. Something told her to turn back. She returned quietly, hiding in the shadows, watching as Baron led Stefan toward the sacred tree. When Stefan asked where the sacrifice was, Baron's unsettling reply was that their god would provide. Gabby armed herself with a bow and tried to follow without being seen. Along the way, a humanoid fungus stumbled near, forcing her to hide behind a tree before she managed to strike it down. At the tree, Baron revealed the truth. Stefan was the sacrifice. Before Stefan could even process, his father struck him from behind. Roots and branches from the ancient tree twisted upward, wrapping around the boy as Baron raised his weapon to finish the ritual. Gabby burst into the clearing, firing an arrow that barely slowed Baron down. She was quickly ensnared by the same writhing branches. Fighting desperately, she freed herself, but Baron lunged at her, overpowering her with ease. Stefan rushed to help, but Gabby was knocked unconscious. As a fungus creature closed in on her, Stefan fought it off in a frenzy, finally killing it. Meanwhile, Baron dragged Gabby to the tree, ready to spill her blood. But Stefan, furious and heartbroken, drove a blade into his father's back. Baron fell, trying one last time to twist it as a test. Gabby urged Stefan to leave him, and together they fled. Back at the cabin, Gabby bathed, but visions of the organism haunted her. Meanwhile, Baron's pleas to the tree went unanswered. Without the protective mushrooms, the infection consumed him. Gabby, now dying herself, told Stefan to go live a real life. Days later, as her body transformed beyond saving, she begged him to end it. Tearfully, Stefan did. Alone, he finally left the cursed forest behind, stepping into the city. But freedom carried a shadow. Everything he touched bore the silent contamination of the organism that still lived inside him.